Giving me some grief. Awesome. Cool.
You're good to go now.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Okay, well, welcome everyone. My name is Lauren Barrett. I am a solution consultant here at ServiceNow, supporting a number of government agencies on the federal civilian side. Co-presenting with me today is Mark Morier. He is also a solution consultant. We're basically just the technical gurus or geeks that accompany your sales reps who support your agencies. We focus on the technical side of the platform and participate in solutioning and solving problems and all that fun stuff that you all get to do on a daily basis. Mark's my counterpart, except he specializes in App Engine, which is a product on our platform. Mark, do you want to introduce yourself or any more?
Yeah, good afternoon, everybody. So I'm really glad to join here. Actually, you can hear me?
Yeah.
Someone was talking. Sorry. Yeah, so I joined ServiceNow, a year ago, and so we're going to talk about how fast you can get started with App Engine and start building transformation into federal agencies.
Yep, awesome. All right, so we only have an hour today, but we have a lot of really fun stuff that we're anticipating to cover. First, we're just going to level set on what ServiceNow is. I'm going to venture to guess that most of the folks on here are pretty familiar, so we're not going to spend a ton of time on ServiceNow 101. But we're just going to level set understanding, and then we'll talk a little bit more about what App Engine is in particular. We'll talk about where app dev on the ServiceNow platform and where our App Engine product is within the federal space. And then we're going to launch into a demo where I am going to build a lightweight app on the fly, which is going to be fun and terrifying at the same time. No, I'm just joking. But it'll be good. So with that, let's start with kind of the level setting of what ServiceNow is. As you all know, ServiceNow is a cloud-based platform. And lately, in a lot of the materials and talks we've been giving, we like to tout ourselves as the platform of platforms. What does that mean? It means that we don't want to come into your organization and rip and replace and just set fire to everything and then install ourselves as the system for everything. Rather, we want to connect with key crucial systems, either they're process systems or systems of record for data, and then come in as that connective layer and that connective tissue to be able to facilitate workflow from within a team, a department, a division, or even across the agency. We are not an IT exclusive tool. We dabble in obviously the IT service management space, enterprise service management space, operations, security, HR, customer flows. As you can see, we have a number of pre-built capabilities on top of our platform that you can configure a little bit to meet your needs, because every agency, every customer is different, and then rapidly deploy to get quicker time to value and to get things out into production to your employees and the constituents that you serve a lot quicker. For everything else, everything that doesn't fit in a nice bucket like incident management or HR service delivery or call center management with CSM, we have our App Engine solution, which is what we're going to be really talking about and getting into today. And then externally facing, we like to be able to meet employees and workers where they are. We connect out. We have mobile and push notification capabilities. We integrate with many of the popular collaboration tools like Slack, Microsoft Teams, and I guess that's the Facebook Messenger link. I almost said Skype. But anyway, so we connect in your internal systems of record, come in as the connective tissue to be able to facilitate workflow across divisions. And then we can connect out and meet folks where they are to make sure that work and data is passed through your organization seamlessly. So I'm highlighting the App Engine here. We like to say, especially in federal, this is really, really applicable because agencies have mission, right? And the whole reason that an agency has mission is because that agency does something that no other agency or organization perhaps within the country does. So it's essentially unique. ServiceNow, we lost our clairvoyant abilities years and years ago, so we can't really anticipate all of the different nuances and processes that organizations and agencies will have. So we abstract them up to these buckets, and then we give you that App Engine capability so that you can build and streamline your custom workflow or your custom process or your custom mission, all on that same platform, along with your internal and externally facing workflows. Mark, anything you want to add on this slide?
Yeah, what's great about App Engine is that, very often people have this preconceived notion that, with ServiceNow, you can only do IT ticketing system or, employee workflows or customer workflows. But really the power of the App Engine is that it allows you to create a new experience. It allows you to, look at a use case that there is no solution on the marketplace today. And it allows, citizen developers to work together to be able to really implement that use case by leveraging all the capabilities of the Now platform.
Yeah, awesome. Well said. Thanks, Mark. So now we're going to dive into a little bit about how we can achieve IT modernization and digital transformation with App Engine, specifically in the federal space. So Mark, I'm going to pass it off to you here for the slide.
Yeah. The first thing is that we need to think, if you want to think about the different use cases for App Engine and for ServiceNow, it's very important nowadays to think about who's the customer and what do we need to do. And most of the time, I've seen so many engagements and projects where we built, processes, complex or simple, but very often the end user was not in the picture, and it was very difficult for the end user to actually find that process. So what we have is the ability to very quickly build a process, right? So if you think about it, it could be a FOIA request, it could be a request to work from home, it could be a request for, trying to know where's my paycheck, I haven't received it, or any specific federal use case. And you have the ability to look at the perspective from the end user. So the first thing that we want to, the first principle that we want to follow is really a principle to look at the platform and the use case to engage the user. That's why we want to start with, how do we make it easy for the end user, right? So because everything is a type of work that needs to be not only found directly into a portal, easily accessible, through mobile, through a portal, any type of channel. It could be a chatbot as well. But those work, it could be replacing a digital form, for example. And that form, to make it work, is actually, someone has to fulfill that process. And that's where that work needs to be done across the organization. Right.
Yeah, and just a continuation onto that use case. All of these units of work and all of these questions that Mark brought up, they really, at the end of the day, if you want to be able to modernize them and kind of bring them into the 21st century, they need a workflow engine or a process engine behind the scenes to really automate, reduce manual steps, and take that process from point A to point B. Like I mentioned in the platform of platform slides, there are key crucial systems that already exist within your organization that need to stay in place and need to do what they do best. So instead of trying to replace them or compete with the best in breed for something that your agency is using, rather use a platform of platforms like ServiceNow to come over top with that workflow engine, with the forms digitization, with like omni-channel engagement, to be able to provide a better user experience, but also a better agency and specialist experience. So it's not just enough to focus on the citizen or the externally facing consumer of the good or service that you're providing. Something that my account exec and I like to quote quite often is, happy employees make happy customers or happy citizens. So leveraging App Engine to automate the processes that don't really fit nicely within some of our software as a service offerings are going to be that way to be able to make those improvements within your organization.
Yeah. And, what's really nice is that I mean, what's fantastic with the ServiceNow platform is that you can actually get started pretty quick. And I know that, very often we have those massive projects in the government, but you can only be successful by really looking at the use case, isolating those use case, and creating simple sprints to implement those use cases. And so what's nice is that, I've been only a couple of months at ServiceNow, and I was able to work with different federal agencies to leverage the App Engine product to build a couple of solutions for the government. So we have the App Engine sitting on top of the ServiceNow platform. We can build different artifacts that are government oriented. And I started building an investigation case management that was initially used by a law enforcement agency. And then later on, we can reuse those artifacts for internal affairs investigation or an IG agency, for example, right? And then, so if you move next, Lauren, and then later on, we worked on a recommendation forward on the DoD side, right? So if you think about it, it works for service members. It also works across federal agencies where everybody has to really meet their objective and receive a fair compensation. So we have the ability to digitize all the paperwork that people have to fill today. So for example, the biggest value really for service member in that case was that they're able to get the awards that they deserve instead of filling all the paperwork. And what we heard from the military is that those awards get lost, right? So it's very important for not only for the end users, the constituents, the service members, and also the caseworkers to digitize all those processes, leverage the capabilities of the platform to be able to have visibility into those applications and what's happening, right? So one of the powers that with the App Engine is that you can build different components for different agencies, different components for your own agencies, and have those different modules, what we call the scope application, work and reuse across different modules as well. Right? So that's what we I call the build once, use anywhere. So you build faster, you prototype, you work with your end user, you validate the scope, and you refine and you fine tune the application and you deliver quicker.
Yeah, it's the build once, use anywhere is really, really powerful because from a master data management perspective or master process management perspective, you can build these entities within your organization that, to your point, you can then just kind of copy paste, extend functionality to different divisions. Control the configuration, control the data flow in centralized locations, make it a really sustainable process, and then extend that functionality out without having to rebuild all of the component pieces and parts over and over again. So this is a really cool example, and it's really cool to see how this kind of this plays out with our customers. So where is App Engine in Fed? There's actually more customers that are using App Engine than not, but we just wanted to pull out and kind of distill a few examples. And so the DoD example that Mark just kind of went through was that recommendation for award. How do we acknowledge service members for exemplary service? What's the process for submitting, approving, providing that business case, approving, and then ultimately providing the recognition and kind of closing the loop and closing the process. I'm sure you can imagine, originally this probably was done via email and tracked in spreadsheets, and information got lost, and perhaps people who were expecting to be recognized or should have been recognized, missed out. So now this is a much more consistent process for branches of the DoD to be able to take care of their internal employees. Another example reaching into major law enforcement agencies, really more on the administrative side, is IT acquisitions. I don't recognize any names from last month, but I did a talk about IT acquisitions in the federal government on ServiceNow, and this flow utilizes our App Engine capability very heavily. It's about building a workflow to be able to streamline from request to procurement how IT manages the acquisitions of goods and services within an agency. The cool thing about this is that this app was built at a headquarters level and is now ripe with possibility and opportunity to be able to pass down into child or like sub agencies to this headquarters. So really using that whole mantra of rebuild or build it once and then reuse often, extending that efficiency to other areas of the government. And final example, Mark, I'll pass to you.
Yeah, and so as you can see, from the previous examples, these examples are very quickly built by leveraging all the capabilities of the platform to expose a process. Like Lauren is going to show you, defining the data as an input, and the user interface is going to be generated automatically, really shortening the time for implementation. Sometimes you have an agency and type of users that need a very different user interface because they are probably running in the field, such as we work with a law enforcement agency where they had very specific user experience requirements. Right? So we worked with a partner and we worked with the agency. We worked with understanding what they are trying to do. We mapped the customer journey. So we have an approach where we are part of the innovation team here at ServiceNow, where we can work with different federal agencies to really transform, not only just map a paper-based process to a simple form, but really understand and move this to the next level. When we presented this to the end customer, they said that this looked so much better than anything else they had seen so far. So this is really a capability of the platform that allows you to start very simple, make sure that you have all of the PC, that they work together. And then if you want to expose to the end user that same process, but with a different user experience, the App Engine really allows you to bring maybe more complex development strategies to build such a different user experience.
Yep, exactly. I'm going to pause here for questions. I know we've been running hot on these slides. Any questions or comments on anything that's been covered so far? We have a small group. All right. Well,
there's a question in the chat.
Hey, Lauren. Yeah, there is one in the chat here. Yep.
Oh, awesome.
Can ServiceNow integrate with database without to ingest the data? Hold on, let's see if I can decipher that a little bit. Or Don, if you just want to go ahead and ask your question while Lauren's here.
Yeah.
Yeah, we have in the platform, we have since Orlando the concept of remote table that allows us to expose data coming from a third-party system inside a ServiceNow screen or workflow as if it was inside the ServiceNow platform. So we are decoupling the need actually to have that data inside the platform. So yes.
Yeah, and then likewise, I think something that I didn't hit very hard during the platform of platform slide, but it bears mentioning here is the ability to do more traditional integration. So yeah, remote tables, Mark, exactly. You can kind of bring data in, expose it, but not actually store it within the platform. But we do have very robust integration capabilities that really does allow for us to be that platform of platforms where we come in and connect to key systems of record or other process systems and then facilitate the passing of data and process or tasks between ServiceNow and those systems. So we kind of hit it at both angles. Don, did that answer your question? I'll take silence as a yes.
Yeah. So just one quick comment is that before you go, Lauren, is that if anyone in the audience wants to know more about those applications or those use cases we talked about, would be happy to do so in the future.
Mm-hmm. Good point. All right. So as much as we all love PowerPoint, I think getting into the meat of app development on the platform is kind of what we're all here for. So let's go ahead and get started. I want to set the stage a little bit before we actually get into an instance. So I'm going to be over the next 25 minutes or so, I'm going to be building an application from scratch. It's going to be really, really lightweight, super simple, just because I only have 25 minutes to with you all to build it. But it's the aim here is to give you an idea of kind of the step 1, step 2, step 3, step X. If you wanted to start flexing your developer muscles and build applications on the ServiceNow platform. A little bit of background about me, like I studied Chinese and thought I was going to like join the CIA and be a spy when I graduated. The fact that I can, build applications on a cloud platform is still, I have to pinch myself sometimes. So the only reason I say that is to try to make it less terrifying and less intimidating for folks who might be interested in doing this type of work on ServiceNow. We have a wealth of resources that we'll also be able to talk about kind of at the end of the session in terms of if you want to get some guided on-demand training around app dev. But the goal here is just to demystify what this looks like on the platform and to give you a really simple example of what this would look like. So the use case is claims request. It's some kind of case management within a federal agency. So think I support either a group of employees or I support citizens, and I want a mechanism to be able to provide citizens to come in and say, hey, I need to report a claim against something. I have a question. I need help. I need to interact with the agency in a monitored fashion. And I'd really prefer for it not to be through email or phone calls or, God forbid, snail mail or faxing. But that's how it's done today. I'm sure you've all has seen it or heard it or maybe even own a process that's highly manual and has it's very, very high touch, highly manual, probably paper-based, and you'd like to bring it into the 21st century and modernize it a little bit. So the claims request process today, we have our users. They come in either through the phone call or a phone number on my website, or they write a letter or they fax something into the agency. There's a paper-based application that might need to be have some handwritten components. There's a broken communication loop in terms of our internal folks at the agency who process these applications or these requests. How do we reach back to the citizen? Do we give them a call? Do we send them an email? What if my email gets lost? Do we need written communication to monitor the interaction between our agency and the citizen? It's kind of a jumbled mess and it's all over the place. It takes a long time for us to process requests because of this highly manual nature. We work a lot in spreadsheets. I've created some SharePoint sites that house documentation, but it's all really disjointed and it's hard to know or to teach someone this process because I really need tribal knowledge to remember where things are, who I need to go to for what. Not super efficient. So what we're going to do here is we're going to reimagine this process using a custom app on ServiceNow. We're going to introduce things such as digital forms. I'm sure you all have heard the digital forms buzzword floating around the federal space. Let's get out of paper. Let's get out of PDFs. Let's get folks into interactive forms that can collect data that perpetuate a process, that perpetuate a workflow. We're going to introduce portals and the idea of self-service. So the citizens that we support on a daily basis probably use Amazon. I know I do. I'm on Amazon like every other day. I love being able to go in and do my own searching and find my own information and submit my own requests without having to sit on a phone and wait for someone else to do it for me. We're going to introduce the idea of automating through workflow. And we're also going to talk about what it looks like when you have that single system of engagement. We'll talk about mobile reporting and analytics and things of that nature. Specifically, what we're going to build is that portal, so that single point of entry for our citizens. Then we're going to see how we can create, we call it a record producer, but you can call this a digital form. It's a mechanism in which to collect information to initiate a workflow. Then we are going to continue our digital forms, but to the back end or to the specialists that process the work within your agency. And then we're going to wrap it up with an automated flow. So this is something that connects all the pieces together we can use to define the steps of a process from point A to point C. And with that, we're going to go ahead and launch into the demo. Let me check the chat. I don't see any new questions. Anyone have any questions or comments before we pop into the system?
Richard was asking, that's a web view form, right? So Richard, can you maybe elaborate a little bit on?
Oh, I was just talking about viewing the data. So in other words, if you're on a form on a portal, you're seeing the internal, and then to view the external database information, you probably have to be presenting that on a web view form, right?
You could. This can also be a related list in the classic UI as well.
Oh, okay, cool. Thank you.
Hey, Mark, can you see my instance?
I can.
And okay, if anyone cannot see my instance, I have something. I switched gears from our PowerPoint right now. Just let me know. Okay, great. So I'm putting my developer hat on right now, and I'm going to walk you through some of the initial steps on how to start building that simple, quick, lightweight application. What we're looking at here is what we call the platform UI, or the classic view. For me, I've been working in ServiceNow for almost 6 years now, and this is what I'm used to. It's my favorite. It's not the prettiest thing to look at, but it sure is functional. So when we're, and I say not the prettiest, as in we have agent workspace now, which kind of gives us a really nice UI. And then, of course, we extend the portal to our employees and our customers. And those are all much prettier to look at. But if I want to start with the application build, I'm going to go to what we call Studio. I'm going to spell it correctly. And Studio is an IDE like interface, integrated development environment type interface, where we can go to build applications, maintain applications, enhance applications built on the ServiceNow platform. And so you can see here that I have some applications that I've been playing around with, but I'm going to go ahead and create a new one. This pop-up window, for those who might not have built an application before, or maybe not in a few releases, is called Guided App Creator. And it's a wizard-like interface that allows you to basically be guided step by step to create the components that would formulate the foundation for an application. ServiceNow, with every feature release, with every family release, right now we're on Paris. It's alphabetical order, major world cities. So before it was Orlando, now we're on Paris. Upcoming is Quebec. With every release, we introduce more and more functionality with the goal of making it much more approachable to build and enhance on the platform. So no longer do you have to be a pro coder to be able to build an app. Business analysts and process owners now have a little bit more flexibility and control around how their process is manifested within the system. So I'm going to go ahead and call my app something. I'm going to call it claims request. I can describe it, and you can see here that it is creating a scope. And basically what a scope is in ServiceNow, I think, Colin, someone's in the waiting room, if you wouldn't mind letting them in.
Yeah, I did.
Okay, got it. Awesome. What a scope is it essentially, I'm a very visual person, so the way that I imagine it, it's like a little bubble around your application plopped on the platform. And the reason why this bubble is important is because as a developer, and then eventually as a process owner or a system administrator, that bubble gives you full control around who has access to the data and functionality of that application, especially if you are modernizing processes that might be sensitive in nature or manage sensitive data. Application scopes become really, really useful in controlling that database level security for the application. So all this is doing is giving us a system name that designates, hey, this is the scope that we're going to be working in. We can drag and drop an icon. I don't have anything fun or silly to add quite yet. And so now that we've named our app, we have a scope. Now we are going to tell the system who is allowed, at least initially, to access this application. I can search existing roles. Like, for instance, maybe I want, if this is an IT-based app, I can reuse the fulfiller role to control access to this application, or I can create a new one. So I'm just going to create a user role, and it's going to take the scope of my application and then do .user, and that indicates that, hey, this is a user role. I could do a manager role. I could do an admin role. You can get really as granular, as high level as you want with roles and permissions when it comes to your application. And usually when you're in this guided app creator, you can take things slow, keep it simple, and always come back to roles and permissions and get to that granular level once you really flesh out and put structure to your application. So I've built my role. I'm just going to go ahead and progress to the next step. Now, these are formats that we're going to look at. The classic view is where we started. That's the platform UI. It's certainly my personal favorite. But we can also configure a workspace and mobile for our application. Workspace is really useful for fulfillers or for analysts and specialists. The folks, wrench turners, I like to call them, folks who are responsible for taking whatever work is going to be resulting from your application and working it on the back end. So yeah, I want to go ahead and create a workspace for the folks who are going to be managing claims requests that come through the system. I obviously definitely want to do a classic view as well. It's always just good to have in case you need to be able to go in and kind of do some maintenance on your application. And we're really, really happy to announce that finally, after what feels for me like a millennia of waiting, mobile is now GCC FedRAMP certified for the government. ServiceNow is FedRAMP certified, FedRAMP High actually. We've been waiting for mobile to be certified. So now I can also create a mobile applet for my application. So if I wanted to extend the ability for agents to be able to manage approvals or manage work on the go, now I'm creating a placeholder on my mobile application to be able to do so. So I selected all three. You can choose one, you can choose two, you can choose all three, whatever suits your needs. And we're going to come back to that in a little bit and then configure those formats a little bit later. But this is really the core and an important piece here. This is the table structure. So for those of you who are familiar with building apps on ServiceNow, ServiceNow is really, it's object-oriented architecture, meaning we have a bunch of objects and they relate to one another in various fashions to be able to perpetuate work or be able to manage and store data within the system. So at its core, our applications can be based off of at least one, probably many tables. And these can be process tables. Process tables manage work like the incident table is a process table because the incident management in and of itself is a process. We could also use data tables. So this could be like a table, for instance, that I connect to an external system to bring data in, and I can use that data to perpetuate my process. I'm going to go ahead and create a new process table for this application. It's going to be a table that houses claims requests that are coming in from our citizens. I could choose to use an existing table that might already be out there in my ServiceNow ecosystem, but for the purposes of this demonstration, I'm going to create a new one. ServiceNow makes it easy to create tables. I can simply upload a spreadsheet and it'll take each column header and the underlying data attributes for each column header and create fields and data records within my table. I could create it from scratch. There's some merit to that, especially when you're creating data tables. But for my process table, I'm going to extend a table, and I'm actually going to extend it from one of our core base tables, the task table. I am going to venture to ask the group why I would extend from task rather than creating something from scratch. Does anyone want to pipe in and offer some insight on that?
Because you want the fields?
Yeah, exactly. So the task table contains about 60 fields that are very common and useful and kind of standard for task management in ServiceNow. In fact, the task table is a parent table to a lot of the tables that you might be using today: incident management, change management, problem management, service catalog request. HR is extended from task. Trying to think, CSM, they're all pulling from task-based data attributes, and they all inherit that functionality and fields from their parent table task. So when I choose to extend a table from task, I get to inherit all of that functionality, and then all I have to do is add maybe one or two data attributes that are unique to my claims request process, and then I can move on with my day. It's really awesome. So yes, thank you to the person who chimed in there. Table inheritance is really useful when it comes to application development. So it is going through and building my table. So we can see here are all of the fields that I'm inheriting from the task table. So I can kind of look through here and say, okay, all right, I got contact type, I got close by, awesome. But I have an opportunity here to add some unique data fields that might be crucial to my claims request process. So I'm going to click the add a new field button, and I'm going to say I want to be able to specify the claim type, and I want to make it a choice field. So I want it to be a drop down that allows either the citizen or someone within my organization to choose from a set of choices. And I'm going to choose drop down with none. Yeah, that's fine. I'm going to add another field, and I'm going to say, is this an urgent claims request? I'm going to make this a true false field. So true false fields just manifest like little check boxes. So if it's checked, that tells the specialist working the case that it's urgent. If it's unchecked, then it indicates it's not urgent. And I'm also going to put agency POC. So if the citizen has been working with someone at the agency already, I want them to be able to specify that person. I'm going to choose a reference field, and reference fields are awesome because they just simply point to buckets of data or tables within our instance that already exist. So I'm sure you can guess what table I'm going to point this to. I'm going to point this to our user table. So this is where I have an integration already with Active Directory. I'm pulling in employee data on a regular basis. I know I have all the most up-to-date information. Rather than trying to replicate it, I'm simply just going to point that field to that bucket of data and give my organization a consistent way to be able to reference users within our table. So another benefit of object-oriented architecture, we get to reuse data sources. It reduces manual data entry, duplicate data sources, typos. It makes a report on information. So I added 3 new fields. I'm good for now. I can always come back to my table and add more fields later if I feel inspired. So I'm going to go ahead and click continue. I'm going to call my table just claim. It'll pluralize it for me in my application menu. But when someone submits a record into this table, they're going to be submitting a claim. I want to auto number it, and I can control the prefix and what the starting number and how many numbers of digits that come after it will be. I can, again, manage the access. Remember, I have that claims request user role that I created in the beginning. I'm going to go ahead and continue on. All right, so the system's thinking, it's putting my table together. I have 78 fields in my claim table, and now it's ready to go. It's ready to configure, it's ready to tweak. But we have that foundational process table all set to be able to work off of. All right, so I'm done with tables for now. I'll take a breath here. Any questions around what I've covered so far? All right.
Yeah. So what you set up, Lauren, here is just clicking on start for each of the UI that you want. Mm-hmm. So just for the audience here is that the user interface is going to walk Lauren through configuring what are the different behavior that she wants for each of the user interfaces, and behind the scene, the guided app creator is going to generate the code for connecting the record that she created with the user interface. So in a very short amount of time, all the data and the UI will be connected and ready to use.
Yep.
And the mobile side, that goes into the Now mobile agent app, or is this creating a custom wrapped mobile app?
So by default, it goes into the agent app.
Perfect. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Yep, absolutely. And in terms of extending your application's functionality into just kind of the general like employee Now mobile app, you can use your service catalog and record producers to give them an entry point into your application, which we'll see a little bit later down the road.
Yeah. And one thing that we've added recently is mobile branding. So you can now have your agency-specific mobile app with your own branding, with your own app that can be installed on the end user's mobile phones.
Which is a different licensing modality.
I believe so, yeah.
All right. So as Mark was talking, I basically just went through and verified the structure and setup for my agent workspace, my classic view, and my mobile application. So these are just they're just baseline, is baseline setup. And so from here I can go and build off of or tweak these setups as needed. So I'm gonna go ahead and hit done. And that's basically it. Now we can end the meeting. No, I'm just joking. But I've completed the guided app creator. I have my application. What is left to do from here is to go back to some of the pieces and components that we talked about. How do we extend access to this application to the citizens that I serve? How do I give my specialists within my agency a mechanism to be able to work on the requests that come through? And then how do we build a workflow behind the scenes to kind of connect all the pieces together to finalize our process? That's what we're going to focus on next. But the guided app creator basically gives us that foundation from which we can build off of. So when I hit done, I'm going to click back into my application and it brings me back to Studio. Now, the cool thing about Studio is that it essentially consolidates all of the various areas and objects within ServiceNow that are related to this application, all within the navigation to the left. I also can start creating additional application files, things like maybe I need to create another table. Maybe I need to create a record producer or a flow or an email notification to connect with my process. I can do all of that using the create application file option here. So if I'm looking down my list of things to do, I think I'm going to take a look at the table record really quick. So this table record basically just defines that claims request table that I extended from task. We have all of the it's the 78 plus the 3 fields that I created to make a total of 81 fields here. And we can see here's my agency POC field. These are all entries within our table, all of these fields, claim type, urgent. But the cool thing about this is we can go here to start designing our digital form as well. So if I go to the related links kind of towards the bottom of our table record and select show form, it's going to bring me to my digital form. And it's essentially just copying what my baseline parent task form looks like. And for the most part, this is pretty usable. But I'm going to make a few tweaks using a drag and drop interface to design the way that I want this to look like when claims are created and then assigned to the teams and the individuals within my agency. So I'm going to go to the context menu and select form design. Form design is great when you're kind of building a form from scratch. You want to kind of get the structure. Again, like I said, I'm a very visual person, so I like this layout where I can see the fields manifest, and then it's just simply dragging and dropping, hitting the X, pulling fields over from the left to design how they manifest on your form. So I don't think I need configuration item for this particular process. I'm going to move assigned to over to the right. I'm going to move parent to the left. I want to add my custom field agency POC. I also want to add that to the left. I want to find my custom field urgent to the left as well. And what was another one? Claim type. Yeah, I'm going to add that here. Now, one thing, if you remember, I made claim type a choice field, but it didn't, when I was in Guided App Creator, it didn't give me the option to actually specify what types of claims I want to offer out. So I can actually specify that here in form design. If I go to this little gear icon for the field, I can create choices here. So I'll say, maybe this one is benefits, insurance, Lauren is cool, and then other. So we'll go ahead and add those choices. I'm gonna go ahead and save. Can't take yourself too seriously on a Friday, right? I'm gonna go ahead and save this form design.
Yeah, and you can also, using the gear on the menu that Lauren was, you can very quickly set which field needs to be filled. So make them mandatory.
Yeah.
Or make them only.
Yeah, that's a great point. I can also, and so you can see here that now my claim types has choices in addition to none. You can also right click the field and go to the dictionary. The dictionary is essentially the definition record for each data field that you have on your table. I could also make it mandatory or read only here as well. I could also modify the choices. So maybe, hey, Lauren is cool isn't actually a legitimate claim type, so I can go ahead and just delete that choice here, and then no one will be the wiser. But yeah, this is all really easy ways to configure your form and to make it usable. Notice I haven't written a lick of code this entire time that we've been working. All right.
So for example, with the, we had a question earlier about can you integrate with the database, right? So Lauren had a couple of choices in the claim type. If you have a field that is actually contains a very long list of types and those field types are actually maintained into another system, we can actually make that choice a reference field and connect to the third-party system to retrieve the values. So you have one single system of record that you use to manage this data and use ServiceNow to manage the flow.
Mm-hmm. Yep, absolutely. All right, so next up, so let's take inventory. I created my application. I built a digital form. I added some special data attributes. Now I want a mechanism to be able to expose that digital form to the people that I serve, the people who would be submitting claims requests. So still on this table record, I haven't really moved away from it yet. I can go back to this related link section and I can hit add to service catalog. So this is a really, and I have to credit Mark for this. I used to make record producers, which is that mechanism to expose a digital form to your citizens or employees. I used to do this the long way. This is the short way, where basically we can name it. I'm going to call it submit claim. I'm going to give it a category, claim support. And so the category points it to a service catalog that you might already be using within your instance. And then I can just simply start adding fields. So I want that agency POC field. I want the citizen to tell me whether it is urgent or not. Maybe give me a short description. Claim type. That was another one that I had created. There we go. And then I can move the order of these down, and then I'm going to go ahead and save it. And that basically on the back end automatically creates a record producer or digital form that we can now expose on our portal and in our service catalog so that folks can start using it and submitting those requests into our group. So let's take a peek here. Any questions around that process? I hear some background noise. I don't know if anyone unmuted themselves to ask a question.
The question in the chat.
Okay, cool. All right. So now we're going to switch gears here and take a look at what we just built. Let's see what that looks like within the system. So I cheated a little bit. I am using a pre-built portal, and I just changed out the cool picture here. I actually live in DC, right down the street from the Capitol, and so this is I didn't take this picture, but it's my neighborhood, and I wanted to make this a little bit more federally applicable. So I just changed out our pretty green little La Jolla theme that ServiceNow gives us out of the box. I just swapped it out for the picture of the Capitol, but everything else has basically stayed the same. I added a little logo over here in the top left corner, but basically everything stays the same. I'm going to go ahead and just refresh this page so that my record producer comes through. But when I create that record producer, that digital form, I add it to a catalog that's associated with a pre-built portal that you get out of the box, and you can just simply make some tweaks to make it look the way that you want it to look. Now, when I search for claim, moment of truth, we can see the record producer to submit a claim, and here are the fields that I chose within that add to service catalog function directly from our table. We can see the types of claims that are available. Is it urgent? Yes or no? The agency POC, we have a connection to our Active Directory, so we're getting the most up-to-date and accurate bucket of user data, and we have our short description. And now as a citizen, I can go ahead, I can add attachments, I can submit this and move on with my day. I've just self-served and I'm happier because I didn't sit on hold for a million minutes. As an administrator, if I wanted to make some of these fields mandatory, or if I wanted to do some dynamic form creation, I could go back and revisit this record producer back in the classic UI and just add those functions in. But for the purposes of time, we're just going to kind of keep this form simple. But again, we're just leveraging these out-of-the-box components to be able to expose and digitize certain aspects of this process. All right, finally, let's go ahead and build a quick workflow. So I'm going to go back to Studio. I'm going to hit create application file, but this time I'm going to type flow. Flow Designer isn't brand new. Mark, do you know off the top of your head what feature release Flow Designer came in?
I think it's maybe 2018.
Yeah. I forget what letter of the alphabet we were there. But yeah, so about 2 years. And essentially it is the business analyst's dream in terms of workflow building. No longer do we have to use our workflow editor, though super functional. Flow Designer gives us, again, a drag and drop interface, and it allows us to build workflows using kind of natural language and natural processing. So it makes it a lot more intuitive and a lot more logical when it comes to putting together step 1, step 2, forks, if-then statements, connecting out to external systems. It just makes it less code heavy and more just natural language heavy. So I'm going to go ahead and just build a flow here. I'm going to call it claims request. We can see here that my application is selected, so it's going to be under that application scope so that I know that no one else from outside of my team can come in and mess with it. I'm going to go ahead and submit this. Now we could do some really cool things with Flow Designer. I'm just going to create a trigger, which basically tells the system when to activate this flow, and then a few steps and a few actions. We're not going to build out a full flow because I'm running a little bit short on time here. But every flow needs a trigger. When do we start this process? So in this case, I want this flow to trigger when a claims request is submitted, or in this case, when a record is created. And I'm going to tell what table we want the record to come from. So it's going to be the claim table. And then we can either leave it at that, so anytime a record is created in the claims table, or I can add additional filters. And maybe when, if I spell it correctly, claim type is benefits. Okay, so now when a claims request is submitted and the claim types is benefits, this flow will trigger. And now I need to tell the system what to do. Once this flow is triggered, what do we want to do? Well, I want to ask for some additional approval because benefits claims are extra sensitive. I just want to ask for some additional approval before it gets assigned out to a group. So I'm going to go to the action section. I'm going to click on action, and I'm going to type approval. It just helps, let me scroll down a little bit. It just helps narrow down all my options here. So I want to ask for approval. So what we're going to do here is it's going to ask, what do you want approval on? Well, I want that claim record that initially triggered the flow. And then I get to specify the rules for approval. Approve when anyone approves, and then we can do a dynamic reference to a group. I think I created a benefits support group. So if anyone from this benefits support group approves this request, then we can perpetuate to the next step in the flow. Or we can do the same thing, reject if anyone rejects from the benefits support group. And then I can hit done. And so essentially right here, what happens is we are triggering the flow with a record and a condition, and then we're going ahead and generating approval records automatically. Some other cool things I could do here is I could kick off an email notification either to an internal team or back out to the citizen. I could create a subtask. I could do an assignment logic. So like if this, then that, if it's a benefits claim, then assign it to this particular team. You can do all of these things within Flow Designer. And I'll just, before I pause for questions, you can kind of see here, if I click on the action button, even just with the ServiceNow core, you can see all of the things we can update a record. So I can update the state of a record, maybe once the approval is achieved. I can create a subtask. I can delete something. I can manage attachments, I can generate email, I can do modifications with service catalog tasks. When we get into integrations as well, especially when we talk about our integration hub capabilities, we can also, any spokes or connectors that we wanted to do to connect this flow out to an external system, we can manage all directly from this interface. So again, I'm not a super technical person. I'm not a developer by training, but I play a lot in Flow when I build demos for customers. It's something that's really easy to be able to kind of show automation within a process.
What's important here is that we have hundreds of integration with third-party systems. So if you want to have a lot of we announced last week an extension of our partnership with Microsoft, right? So we are using Teams right now. If you have a flow that needs to create a notification, a specific team channel, or want to push a document to SharePoint, we have those kind of integrations. And so we have more than hundreds, what we call spoke, which is a spoke into the wheel of the integration into your ecosystem. And so more than hundreds and adding more every month. So that's something, let us know what kind of integration you're looking for, and we'll find it for you, or it can also be created.
Yep, absolutely. So I'm a little over time, but just to recap, we leveraged an out-of-the-box portal and created a digital form to expose to the citizens that we serve. We created a digital form on the back end that we can use to process work within our organization. And we started creating a flow that can help automate approvals, task generation, and overall orchestration of a process from end to end. And we did that in 25 minutes, I think, if my math serves me. Imagine if I had an hour, or if I had 2 hours, or maybe even 3 hours, kind of how you can build off of, enhance, and refine this particular process, or any process that you're looking to modernize on ServiceNow. So with that, I want to thank everyone for joining us today. We'll make this recording available, but I'm going to take the next minute and a half, and I can also stay after to take any questions that folks may have. And if there are no questions, then enjoy your weekend.
Yeah, Laura,
I have a question.
Yeah,
Sure.
there you go. Somebody had a hand raised.
So for the flow, I see adds the group and they get the notification by the email. So if we have a group and they don't have it, like set up email to get the notification, any other solution to send them the notification and things like that? We had this challenge before inside our organization.
Mm-hmm.
So I want to see what's the best solution for that.
So your question is, if you don't have a group set up in ServiceNow, how can you generate email to specific teams? Mark, I'll lean on you for this a little bit, but some of my initial thoughts, one, group management is very important, and data integrity is very important. So typically, if you're having to target certain individuals or teams for work assignment or for communication, it might be really helpful to kind of create that group and get it in through whatever your Active Directory is. Otherwise, in Flow Designer, you can actually, let me go back to my instance really quick. You can dynamically reference people within people or groups of people within a record. So for instance, in this claim record, we might have things like the assigned to or the assignment group, and you can dynamically reference people within these fields, or maybe you have a custom field that contains one person's name or maybe several people's names, and then you can go ahead and create an email notification.
I think one of the question also was around,
Mm-hmm.
what if the group doesn't have any email, or even better, if you want to reduce the number of email that people are actually getting, right? And so one of the things that I like to use actually is notify people through our internal notification system, or send them a task, so that the next time they actually log into the service portal, they will see a bubble at the top that says, hey, you have a notification, and you can click on notification and accept the task and perform the task at hand. The other option is also, we have, like I said earlier, integration with Slack, integration with different messages, technology that we can push messages, right? The other one is also push notification through mobile devices. So that's a great one, especially when Lauren was creating a claim for benefits, and if this is rated urgent, that's maybe one where you want to push a message to the supervisor's mobile device very quick. And so it's very easy to set, ready to receive and to act on the notification.
Yep. And also in the Flow Designer, we don't typically recommend hard coding people's emails, but if it was a super unique, urgent, special circumstance, or I would even venture to say temporary circumstance, you can hard code email within a flow. But yeah, I would actually do one of the routes that Mark mentioned before I would go the hard coding route. Does that help?
There was a question. I'm sorry. Yeah, there was a question about, can you explain how you got to the ServiceNow core? So this is in the flow designer. When you click on action, you have access to all of the integration capabilities. And so the first one is ServiceNow core. Mm-hmm.
Yep. And then based on the plugins that you have, or the license, the application suites that you are licensed for, the installed spokes will increase depending on the functionality that you have access to. And of course, like here are some of our integration hub connectors and all of that fun stuff. But I work primarily, you can get a lot of stuff done in the ServiceNow using the ServiceNow core capabilities.
And you can also, like I talk about defining the foundation of your application to the agency, you can actually create your own integration or piece of action that you integrate into those actions, and you make them available to the end user so that the users that create the workflow. So instead of having, maybe sometimes you have a complex integration or a complex action, you can actually abstract that complexity, put that into a spoke, into your own spoke, add it to the flow designer, and facilitate and fasten quicken the ability for the users to create those actions.
Mm-hmm. Yep, absolutely. Did anyone else have a question?
Okay, looks like we don't have any.
Cool. All right. Well, I'll stay on for a few more minutes. But thank you, everyone, for joining today, and appreciate your time. And if you have any questions, please let us know.
Thank you, everyone.
And thanks, Mark, for tag teaming this presentation with me.
Thank you, Lauren. Bye. Have a good weekend.
All right. Bye.
Bye.
Hello.
Hi there.
Hi. I was just trying to understand this the ServiceNow flow. I mean the core, because I looked in ours and I don't see that when I looked at action. So because that is something I've been trying to work with, is to really kind of learn and pick up on the flow designer.
Sure.
And when I looked in, maybe I'm doing it wrong, but when I looked in there, I didn't see